Welcome to the FOD, where we bring you insights into the future of digital commerce for free. Season 5 is all about the move to composable architecture, and while it's not a buzzword anymore, there are still a number of unanswered questions, which is why I'm speaking to those who have the answers. In return, if you enjoy our content, we ask if you could like and share to spread the message far and wide. And just like that, we're at episode 4. Today, I welcome Gert van Vliet, Managing Director of TouchTribe. Welcome, Gert. TouchTribe is a Dutch business who specialise in modern composable architecture, working with a number of international brands HQ'd out to the Netherlands. They are also part of the MakerStreet Group, a network of agencies that all specialise within specific areas within digital transformation. Over to you to tell the audience a little bit more about your background, Gert.
Okay, thank you, James. Well, nice to meet you. My name is Gert. I'm, like you said, working for TouchTribe. Before I joined TouchTribe, I worked for Debt and for many years for Individual, and I started over 20 years ago for traditional system integrators like Getronics and Ordina. Originally, I was a developer. I had many roles, but well, I think somewhere in 2007, 2008, I discovered that my strength is more maybe consulting or do consultancy or advising customers and not so much the programming itself. So from there on, I was part of the management team of Individual and help within sales and also advising customers for the right technology. Of course, back then it wasn't composable, but I think around 2015, I already discovered the headless content management systems, which I really liked. By the way, my expertise was really in the content management systems originally, and then it slowly progressed and evolved into commerce systems as well. From Individual, I went to Debt, where I was a business development manager, and I worked there for 1.5 years. And then I was asked by TouchTribe to help them out with their new proposition, which was my opportunity to go for a complete composable strategy, although the term composable, this was 4 years ago, was not around back then. So it was more like modular, headless, cloud native, stuff like that. And then I think two years ago, we renamed everything to Composable, but this is exactly what we do for over 4 years now. So that's my short introduction.
There we go. So it's safe to say, if someone who's been in the industry and in the space for a long time, but more specifically dealing with the composable architectures now for best part of 4 years, even though, like you say, the term itself has only really come to prominence in the last sort of 2 or 3. I guess that leads nicely into the main talking point of today. And the first question is the growth of composable over the last 5 years, because it's something that we've been doing for a long time. Headless itself has been around now for 10 plus years itself too. So I guess let's just dive straight in. And how have you seen the growth of composable over that period of time, Gert?
Well, it's interesting since like you said, at first it was headless, and I used to be in the digital experience platforms, which were just content management systems in the past. So I've seen all those waves, and I think originally it's really something that was initiated by developers. So what I saw was when headless got traction in my mind is already 10 years ago, but it took a long time to really get traction for the bigger organizations to really adopt headless technology. And what I see right now is that finally we're at a stage which I expected to be the situation, I think 5 years ago, where you can really see that also the big brands are, they dare to replace their legacy software with modern systems like commerce tools or Contentful, stuff like that. So I really see, I think the last 2 years now, that it's going very fast, but it's yeah, it's going very slow, and maybe it's exponential. I don't know. That would be nice.
So, do you feel as though there has been a specific moment in time over that 5-year period that you would say is pivotal to the shift in in a company's appetite to move to composable architecture?
Well, I don't really think that there's this very clear point, because I think I do like the term composable. In my mind, I invented the term myself, but that's obviously that's probably not the case. But yeah, we used it in our pitch decks, and we talked about modular, like I said. I think it's just evolution, and the only thing that I maybe underestimated was that if you're on a let's say Sitecore or Adobe, what I consider the more traditional software, and you want to move to something else, you expect a certain maturity, and I think that in my mind they were mature enough, but I think it required a little bit more, and I think it's just that it slowly evolves. And I do think that the term composable, because yeah, it's not that 4 years ago it was completely different how we did it than now, but really helped it. And I also think the Mach Alliance is doing a great job. At least it gets a lot of recognition. So I think it's maybe also the maturity of the terms that we use, and suddenly it becomes like also customers are asking for it instead of us only explaining it to them. So yeah, I don't believe it's just, yeah, how do these things work? If there's enough traction, then suddenly people are starting to talk about it, look for it, hear about it. And maybe also, if you look at the traditional players, they also adopt the terminology that we're using. So suddenly, all those traditional vendors are also using the term composable, and well, that's funny, I think, and that's really helping our business at least. So yeah, I don't think there's one specific point.
Okay. I would certainly agree. I think obviously the Mac Alliance now is certainly well established. They're over 100 members, and from a marketing point of view, if nothing else, they've brought a lot of attention to the move to composable architecture, really promoting some of the brands within there, but also pushing out a lot of collateral to the market just to help educate. Because I think it's fair to say that many have known about this for a long time, but the vast majority of those, at least at the early stages, didn't really understand it. It's obviously quite complex. It's very different to a monolithic transformation. So I think the Mac Alliance has done a lot to help educate those businesses and then bring them on the journey, which I think is really important from an awareness point of view. It's funny you mentioned some of the established players starting to put composable into their branding as well. Obviously, I know SAP Commerce are doing that a lot. I mean, they've just released their composable storefront, and I think if you speak to anybody in the SAP world, they'll tell you that SAP Commerce is composable. I think if you speak to anybody in the Mac Alliance, they'll tell you it's not. So it's always an interesting conversation. But they're obviously trying to break their platform down, right?
Yeah, I really I listened to the first episode, and I really like the terminal composable washing. So that's maybe the best compliment you can get as a movement, if we consider this a movement, is that people are using are doing like this. If they're using the phrase "we are composable," then that's maybe the best recognition you can get that you're on the right way. But yeah, by the way, I think also the Mach Alliance suffers a bit under their popularity, because I also do see that, well, they're not so pure as they were in the beginning. So I do see that they have a lot of members, and that's maybe also yeah, I don't know. I do think it's a bit of a danger that suddenly every company just can call itself composable or MAG certified. I don't know. So that means microservices, API first, cloud native, and headless, and especially the API first part. Yeah, it's quite impossible if you have a digital platform that exists for over 10 years, let's say 15 years, that suddenly it became an API first platform. That's so
Okay.
so they're not as puristic as they were. I don't blame them, but it's something that I noticed.
Okay, interesting. Well, I'm certainly not one to dig into the underlying factors of the tech, but I mean, I take your word for that. However, I would agree any business that's been around for that time might struggle to follow through with being API first. But I guess something that's worth touching upon as we talk about the growth of Composable, particularly looking at like best of breed across the different vendors. If we look at where we are now to where we were 3 or 4 years ago, the choice is huge, right? There's 5 or 6 different options at least for your PIMs, for your CMSs, for your OMSs, for your commerce engine, et cetera, which can create quite a bit of confusion. But we also know that overselling is quite prominent in amongst all vendors, not just within commerce. I've heard stories of over or maybe mis-selling within the composable space, with certain vendors saying that their products link in easily with others. I don't know. What's your? I guess you're someone that deals with this week in, week out. How do you see the miss or the overselling within this space?
Yeah, I think it's wow. I wouldn't say it's a problem, but it's just the reality. I think. Well, let's say if you're in sales, then or you're buying something, then probably you know the other person is a salesperson, so maybe you already detract like 15% of the story that you think, okay, let's be honest, it's probably not as beautiful as they say it is. But what we do see, and that's kind of a problem for us as an agency, because we have to really build it, and a software agency only has to sell a license, basically. They don't have to integrate it or really do it. Um, and what we see is the entire landscape, and we see the nuances of integrations. So the salesperson mostly isn't someone who's really technical. I think in many cases they were just selling legacy software 5 years ago, and now they're on the bandwagon of Composable and selling stuff. So let's say an integration with let's say a content management system. Yes, we have an out of the box integration with, I don't know, system XYZ. Then they probably think this little plugin that they have, that it's sufficient. While we know in reality it often isn't, or that in reality they do have APIs, but the APIs are maybe not as granular as we hope they would be to exactly have this integration. So like always, integrations are pretty hard. And I think if you're selling software, you always try to tell a story that it's quite easy to do, while in reality, it just isn't. But that's a hard sell. So I do see that it's a problem that software vendors will oversell, and probably, yeah, maybe also just by not knowing how hard it really is. If you look at every case study of every agency as well, there never has been a case study live which said, well, we delivered 3 months late, 10 times over budget, and without 60% of the features that we promised. That will never happen. It's always a success story, every case study. So that the same goes maybe for vendors. But that also creates, yeah, some fussiness in the market, maybe.
It can do. You're right, and I think we're at quite an important part of the journey to Composable, because there are businesses that have sort of gone through this transformation. There's also many that are going through this transformation, and it's probably fair to say that it's a little bit more complicated than they first expected. And that's not solely down to the fact that products were missold. There's possibly also the fact that business wasn't quite ready for the change they're going to undergo and all that kind of stuff. But I think a combination of all of it accounts for failing transformations, really. And actually, I think collectively what we all need to try and do is help educate those on what is important and how you should go around it and what you should prepare for, and that this product doesn't actually go with that product very well, even though in theory it should do, and you should maybe use that one with this one, kind of thing. Which I guess leads me on to a question that I've asked everybody so far, which is, in your opinion, should the end customer engage with an agency first or with the SaaS vendors first?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question, and I do think that it really depends on how mature the end customer is. I do believe that we do a great job in educating our customer and also being realistic about what kind of software there is, what they have to look for, maybe the strategy to get from completely monolithic to composable, so we can help out with this strategy. And I'm 100% sure that a software vendor can't do this simply because their salespeople are just trying to sell software. But once you've made up your mind about, okay, we want to go composable, we have some ideas about how we want to maybe approach this whole transformation that we're doing, and you maybe already know, okay, we're going to start with replacing the content management system, or we're going to start with replacing the search and merge and nice solution. Yeah, then you probably could choose to do this selection yourself and first reach out to a software vendor, different software vendors, do a selection, and then based on this, pick your implementation partner. It's not in my interest to say this, by the way. I think in my interest it will be better to say always just trust your agency, especially if we are the agency, but it depends a bit. I think if you're not really mature and you don't have your own architects on board who truly understand modern architecture, at least you could hire someone who knows the market to help you out with the selection. But yeah, at some point you definitely should make the choice for the software yourself, and you should not only rely on your agency, because like we partner with quite a lot of software vendors. I have to say it's fairly easy to implement different content management systems because it doesn't take years to become an expert in a specific content management system, like it did back in the day when we did Tridian and Sitecore. It really took years to become a specialist. It's quite easy, but still, we only are partners with just a couple of them. And for commerce, which is more complicated, also with just 2 vendors. So if you want to see what's out there in the whole market, yeah, you definitely should do a selection yourself and maybe start, maybe with an advisor to help you out with this selection process.
Okay. So I feel like I guess a summary of that then would possibly be to have some kind of external consultancy or advisory services to help you along the way, narrow it down based on the business demands, and then pick your vendors and your agencies based on that initial advisory.
Yeah. What I'm thinking, it's my problem has always been, or at least, well, maybe not always, but at least for years now, that I do see that so often companies think that they are going to do a Sidecore project or Salesforce project or a whatever. The name of the project is basically the product they bought. While in reality, they are building their own digital platform, which consists of multiple pieces of software. This was always the case. It's not exclusively a composable. Like 10 years ago, you also had different pieces of software next together. But if you say, well, we're going to do a Magento project, for instance, you probably will base your complete architecture on Magento or on Sidecore, and even with the best practices of this specific software vendor. And I do think it's way more important to start with a very solid architecture that you say, okay, this is my landscape. This is how I look at APIs, API gateways. This is what I want to use for my front end. These are our core IT systems that probably are not going to change over the next 5 years, like an ERP or something like that. This is something we have to deal with. This is our security policy. And then you have this, well, canvas where you can just put in your composable components that really fit in the architecture that you laid out yourself. And I often see that if you're starting, we need a CMS replacement. Okay, so we have the CMS, and then you just follow the architecture of the CMS, and then suddenly, and that's what I often see with, especially with content management systems in the Dutch market, where many companies chose Adobe or Sidecore or well, some other bigger vendors, where the complete application, it does not only consist of content from Sidecore, but also contains the integrations with all the backend systems. It's all in the same application because, well, this Sidecore specialist that was building the Sidecore implementation was also building the website, and while he was doing it, it's .NET developer anyways, he was also building the integrations with whatever backend system they have. And then at some point they say, well, we want to move towards different software because we don't like this software anymore. And then it becomes complicated because everything is in this, not only this monolithic piece of software, but also in this monolithic implementation that you got from the vendor, the agency you work with. And I think this is because the customer never took ownership of their own architecture. They just let the agency decide. And yeah, you can make it very romantic and think of, okay, this is very well documented and whatever, but in reality, it's just a bunch of guys or girls, 3 or 4, who are building, and this all happened like 10 years ago, your digital platform. They are making decisions that you should make instead of them. And I think that's often the problem, what's happening. So yeah, in reality, I would say, I hope that companies understand the value of architecture and take some time to really think it out, and then select their agencies, the software based on this architecture.
Okay. And a lot of that stems back to the maturity then of the company that we're talking about right now, to understand where they're at in their journey and everything else. So that I like the answer.
Yeah, it was
thank you,
quite a
Gert.
long monologue.
Yeah.
I was talking, I thought, okay, does this story end somewhere?
We got there in the end though, right?
Okay,
I guess that leads nicely to the next question though, which is the number one reason, in your opinion, why composable transformations fail. Is it because of what you've just said, or is there another reason?
Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons. I think that, what I see, software projects in general often fail, and I think this whole digital market is 20 years old, something like this, and I think really commerce is more like 15 years, really mature. But there's a big difference. There's so much innovation in the last 15 years. So a project of 15 years ago was really started probably really small, maybe people were talking about, hey, we have to do something with Facebook or something like that. And now it's really connecting to the core IT systems. It's really big, and it grew over years. So there's lots of legacy. So yeah, one of the, well, there are so many reasons why it fails. Is probably that you have something that's live. Let's say you have your web shop, it's live. You sell like 30,000 products, you have reviews on it, you have your loyalty program, you have everything you have there. You have multiple warehouses, you have maybe some configuration, or I don't know, that you can make a custom sell a custom product and configure it yourself. Well, it's all there. If you want to replace this, most of the customers don't want to say, okay, we're going for an MVP. Everyone wants to do Scrum, but nobody really likes the minimal viable product. So if you want to replace it, you basically have to replace everything. Well, at least that it feels like the MVP is everything that you had, plus a little extra and better and more maintainable and more affordable and future-proof. And I think that's one of the biggest reasons why it fails, is that it gets so big that nobody really can grasp how big it is. And it's probably also going to take longer than expected. It's going to be more expensive. And then it feels like a failure. So yeah, it's really the maybe the challenge to keep it simple, to keep it small. But yeah, then how do you do that? Because you have this monolith that contains everything, has lots of features. You want to replace it by something better, but what is better? Is it better if it's more maintainable but has less features, or is it better when it contains more features but will still maybe contain some legacy software under the hood? And that's really a challenge. And I think this also depends on the maturity of customers of an agency. So if you're really selling to very mature customers, it's maybe easier. But if they're relatively immature, then you're maybe also talking to a marketing manager who just doesn't really understand technology, and finds it really hard to understand that it's sometimes just super complicated. So another reason what I see is that many of the digital platforms are older than the people who are around in a company. So the project is led by people who are only in the company for 1 or 2 years. This is the platform, it runs on system XYZ. It's your job to replace it, but they really don't understand how complicated, how huge it is. And that's, I think, something, it's a challenge for us to point this out, to help our customers with this strategy, to break it down into pieces. But then there's also the business need. Hey, we want to sell more stuff, and we only have this budget, and we also really need this new feature, and it has to go live before Black Friday. I don't know, something like that.
Sound like you're coming from experience.
Yeah.
Is it, I guess you spoke about a lot of stuff there, Gert, and I don't know, my kind of takeaway from that is it kind of boils down to the customer actually understanding what they're doing and why they're doing it. There's a lot of things you touched upon there around the complexities, why they're doing it, wanting more, wanting to modernize, wanting to pay less, got this big deadline to hit. It's like, okay, that's all great, but Joe, what is that deadline you got to hit in 7 months actually realistic for what you want to do? Is it worth actually just doing this half of it now, and then let's see some of that ROI, and then we can then do the second half of it next year, whatever. So to me, that kind of boils down to like them understanding their business and their why. Would you say that's accurate, or have I got the wrong end of the stick?
Yeah, I think that's accurate, and I also think it is complex, not only from a technical perspective, but also from a business perspective. So yeah, that I think you're completely right. Yeah.
Okay. So here's the money question then. So you're sat in a room and you're advising your customers before they go on their journey. What are the three sort of top tips that you would share with them of things that they absolutely need to do to prepare themselves for a successful transformation?
Well, yeah, the first thing is really to try to understand on a certain level how the current architecture is worked out, what you have. Understand what you have, and also try to understand what composable is, what the market alliance is, what how modern systems work and how they differ. So educate yourself a bit before you start your journey. I really think that that's really helpful. I also think many of the customers do this, but there's so much white papers out there. We probably also have one or two. That's sometimes, well, the purpose of a white paper often is to educate, but also to sell. So sometimes it's you may need someone who really understands it and can explain it to you. But I really would advise companies to really try to do one step back. Okay, where do we want to go? What is modern technology nowadays? What is technology that's future-proof in 2024? And that would be my first thing, to just look at the bigger picture and not just go for a simple replacement of maybe one of your tools. Just say, hey, we need a new content management system because the upgrade of the old content management system was too expensive, and they're running out of support by the end of this year, which could be a reason, but then it's not only this replacement.
It shouldn't be the sole reason, right? It should, yeah.
It is about your whole platform and what do you want to achieve. Then the second step would be to really think out a roadmap, how to get there. What is most important to start with? What are the ways to keep it maybe a bit simple and to have a first success relatively soon? Because if you're running a project of 2 years, it costs a lot of money, but it's also really tiring people. It's exhausting. And I think it was already in the first episode, replacing your search and merge solution or adding something that's quite simple, that could be a first step. I also see that replacing your front end, just doing it in iterations and not go for the big bang, replacing your front end is probably easier than replacing your commerce software, because the commerce software contains all the integrations you have. It's going to be huge anyways. But maybe the first step could be to just start with the new front end on maybe a legacy system. So do it in small steps. And yeah, maybe the third thing is just, it's not that Composable is very complicated. I really don't like this. Well, sometimes I really have, well, Composable is complex, while this monolith, it was just like, it sounds like it was set up and everything was arranged for you. But also the projects of 10 years ago were very complicated. So maybe just accept that technology is hard and complex and it's going to take time, and that there is no magical silver bullet that just solves all your problems in a click. And this is really more like something I would like to say to maybe the C-level marketing people who also maybe have a nephew who built a website or something. That
here's your chance.
Yeah, so I took the chance. No, I know this is oversimplistic, but I really see that there's always this desire for maybe also this expectation that after so many years of having digital, that things would have become way more simple, but it just isn't the case for enterprise, because enterprise organizations are not simple. The technology isn't simple because the requirements are complicated. If you have like 10 warehouses, it's just complicated to tell something about the stock levels in the front end. You probably need an order management system in between, or an ERP. Maybe you did some acquisitions as a company. So you have different ERP systems. They all need to be integrated. So that's the reality. Every organization is unique. An enterprise organization is big. So probably your digital platform, for the visitor, it may look like a simple website, but under the hood, it's just really very, very complex if it contains business critical transactions.
Well, as you touched upon earlier, the businesses are getting more complicated, and as they get more complex and bigger, in turn the technology has to do more. Of course, it's going to get more complex as well. It's almost impossible to have a business that's growing and becoming more complicated across different locations and everything else. Yet there's a bit of software that you can just click a button and it works fine, right? It just doesn't work that way. And I often think that we as human beings always want more for less. And I guess this is a kind of a really drummed down example of it, as we're wanting things to be super fast and easy. Um, but that's just not how it works. It's challenging, it's complicated, and you've got to prepare yourself for the bumps in the road that will inevitably come during this transformation.
Yeah, and I also think that in many cases, it's also just the organizations. So let's say you have software. I think integrations are way more easy if you really have modern technology. It's fairly easy to integrate BigCommerce, for instance, with whatever content management system you want, because they both have great APIs, a modern content management system, and it's fairly easy to integrate them together. That's really not a problem. The problem is often that there are so many exceptions in your business rules in the application that need to be built, and that most of the organizations have this tied into their organization so deeply that they don't want to give up on that. So the software solution maybe can really easily build something that, okay, we have stock levels, it's like this, we can do it like this, and then build it in a week. But then there are all those exceptions that make it's always the 20%. The 80% is simple and the 20% is complex.
Yep.
And that's that there is no generic solution for the exceptions that are only there in your organization. And that's maybe just something people have to accept, or maybe hope that AI is going to solve this problem. That could
Maybe
also
one day. Maybe one day.
you don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think there will come a day where AI can do pretty much anything. I don't think we're quite there yet, and probably not quite there very soon. But I'm sure one day.
Yeah, I'm also sure, but I think that's really the difference, because I think for your listeners it might be clear, but I think every episode you're talking with people who are working for the enterprise market, and that's where this complexity lives. It's really not. If I would start selling t-shirts tomorrow, I would just, I don't know, use Shopify and
Yeah.
off you go. Because I accept that my team is probably not entirely brand consistent. I accept that I have to do some manual stuff, but yeah, then if you have an organization of thousands of people and your processes that you want to have implemented, then yeah, it just becomes complex. And I don't think that AI is going to solve this problem within 1 or 2 years, but yeah, eventually probably it will be very helpful.
Okay. Yeah, I think I mean you're right. Then the majority of the listeners are at that enterprise level, and certainly a lot of space in the market for platforms like Shopify to come in for some of the completely non-complex sort of setups that there are, and actually is a great platform in itself, and is going from strength to strength. And I think we will start to see that push further into the enterprise space as well. We could probably talk about Shopify for a long time too, but I'm conscious of the time. Let's move on to the next question, Gert. So um, let's try and summarize this one up as fast as we can.
Sorry.
No worries. Um, what is the number one thing that you would advise your customers to check before finalizing the SIs that they use for the implementation?
Yeah, well, that's a tricky question. Yeah, so you're doing your SI selection, of course, based on many requirements you have, probably on price. But I think one of the most important things is the process. Are you and the cultural fit? Is there really check if especially if you're in a more official RFP process, then probably there are those hard requirements. But at the end of the day, we are people and we have to work together. And I think that's the cultural fit is super important, and also the way of working, the process. So I do see in practice that sometimes maybe also the customer, our customers do something like wishful thinking, but we do it as well. I think it's a two-way street. That okay, I did hear that this customer wants to I don't know have their own Scrum Masters, but yeah, maybe once we're on the road, try to get this idea out of their heads. And the other way around, maybe they hear something that we say that doesn't entirely fit the process, but they think, well, we just make them move our way. And I think this, because it's probably a long project that you have to collaborate with, the way of working is extremely important. Well, just sorry, ja, ik zit in de opname. Sorry.
Don't worry, that's okay.
So yeah, I think it's really about how you approach the project and to double check whether this really fits your organization and if the SI really fits your organization.
Okay.
Because I think we are a relatively small company, so we are very agile. But yeah, if you know you are, maybe you hope for an agile company to work with an agile agency, but you know that you're also very bureaucratic and that everything takes ages. I think it's just not necessarily a very good fit to so yeah, for me this is the most critical thing. And maybe also you can always check their work, maybe ask for references and stuff, but in the end it's just, hey, do you really feel like this is a very good fit? And that's way more important than just the estimation of the first project you're going to do together.
Yeah, I like that, and I think often we forget. Look, we're people, right? And then it's about how you work with somebody. What is the engagement like with the SI and yourself? Do you get on? Can you work together? It goes back to what I said about there's going to be challenges. Are you going to tackle those challenges in the same way, or are you on different pages? That will make a big difference. In fact, one of the guests we had in the last season, a chap called Craig, who headed up MKM's transformation, he said that for him, picking the SIs was all, and the vendors was all about their cultural fit, and could he see them working together in the future and tackling challenges, and were they just on the same page, and that he felt that was absolutely key for those guys to have a successful transformation. And a lot of the time when I ask this question, people say check the case studies, etc., etc. And also you mentioned that as well, but I liked your emphasis on the people element. Cultural, is it right? Do you get on? Can you work together? I think that's really important.
Yeah. Of course, the case studies are important, but yeah, like I said, I think there's no case study alive that tells
Yeah,
that doesn't tell a successful story, and um, it's still important. But for instance, one of the things that went wrong with the company we recently worked with is that we are a project company, and we really like to do these transformation projects. Um, but we're really different than a huge SI, which is probably just more about getting people in a company and to work together with, so to become part of the organization they work for. It's we are TouchTribe, and this is the company we work for, and we make a project team that consists of people from us and from the customer, and we work together towards this goal. And sometimes a project can take a year or even longer. That's not a problem. And also we do maintenance. But the people who work for us, and I think in general, people who work for an agency, um, they like to work for different companies. They like to move fast because they like technology, they like to be on the forefront. And those are totally different species compared to people who work for a contracting agency that's just put them. So yeah, in
put
the
them on
past
a
I
project.
worked
Yeah.
for customers as a developer for over 2 years, where I felt more related to the customer I was working for than to my actual boss. And that's also something that maybe you should understand if you are going to hire an agency, that probably the people in this agency are not going to be the same people forever. It's during this project. So maybe also sometimes an agency can help you to make this transformation, but maybe when it's like 80% of the work has been done, and you're more in let's say maintenance mode, yeah, maybe then at some point you have a different need. So that's really something to be aware of, that agencies are just different than system integrators, I think.
And that's a very valid point. So finally, where does the market go from here?
Yeah, that's the 1 million question.
Yeah.
It's yeah, that's interesting. Because in general, I think you can always predict, especially if you're in the market for quite a long time, you see these cycles, I think. So my prediction would be that, well, I think everything started with best of breed products, and there's new technology. It was Contentful, maybe it was Commerce Tools. There's new technology, and developers are enthusiastic about it. And then you see, okay, now it's really mature. So now we are where we are. But still, I think we're talking about best of breed products, replacing the suite solutions. That's I think in general where we are. But I still see the need in the market, especially from the business side, to 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 have only one or two vendors that handle everything, because it's just a compelling story. Hey, we have this platform that can do everything for you. And also from the software industry, I do see that every software agency started maybe with a very idealistic approach, like, hey, we got this cool technology. We are 4 people somewhere in Germany. And then suddenly you are a big company and you have investors and you need to make money. You need to upsell, you need to cross sell, you need to do everything. So you just need more features. But at some point, and that's something I already see, is that especially in content management, there are not so many unique selling points anymore. It's more like a commodity. So what I think is going to happen is that they are going to add extra capabilities to their products. And at some point, I might even call it something like the digital experience platform in the cloud or something, or this the MAG API first digital experience platform for all your needs. And it's already happening. You see acquisitions from Commerce Tools, from Bloomreach, I think it is already happening. And this is, I don't like it. At the same time, I think it's just something that's going to happen. Maybe also some acquisitions of the more traditional vendors who just buy a product from the market, like Adobe did with Magento, for instance, in the past.
Yeah.
So this for me, this seems quite logical that's going to happen. And then there's always the part that's unpredictable. So, and that's maybe AI. What is AI going? How is AI going to shake up the world? And just like social media, I think no one expected social media to be so important for everything in society. And I think AI is really interesting because right now I do see implementations and it's quite predictable in the content management system. It helps you. It's basically just saves you the copy paste action from ChatGPT by just doing a nice summary based on just a few phrases. So that's very lightweight integration, but it would be really interesting if AI could really create content based on maybe the behavior of your visitors. And I think this deep integration of AI is a matter of time, but it's also very interesting to see, maybe something pops up, maybe in combination with, I don't know, virtual reality or something. That's I find that very hard to predict, but that's the unknown. And for me, the known is really just sweets in the cloud.
Let's touch just really quickly before we wrap things up. Then let's just touch upon that point about AI. If you had to take a guess at when you believe we will have the biggest developments within AI that are really going to shake things up, what would you say? Are we talking within the next 3 years, the next 5 years, a bit longer?
I think within 3 years, because I think what I really like about Composable, what really helps you if you already are, is if you rely on only one software vendor, you have to wait until this software vendor implements something. But for instance, Algolia and other search and merge solutions already have implemented AI quite well in their keyword in the product, and it's fairly easy to implement. So you can be that's the promise of Composable, of course, that you can move more quickly. So I do think that within 3 years, already a lot has happened, and maybe some of the things that we can even imagine right now that predict. But yeah, I think within 3 years, things can look very different already.
All right, exciting. Well, I look forward to it. It's going to be an action-packed 3 years ahead, then I imagine. So let's see, and we can come back to this in 2027 and just see exactly what's happened. I have to think about that.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if I'm that good in predicting. I used to have a blog post about in 2008, which had the phrase. The prediction was that was the year that YouTube was very young, and then my prediction was 2008 is not going to be the year of video, and that was because other companies claimed that it was going to be the year of video. And then YouTube really exploded, so that was completely off. I was really ashamed of this prediction. So
okay,
interesting.
hopefully this one's slightly more accurate then. There we go. All right, but yeah, that leads nicely to the end of the episode. So thank you very much for your time, Gert. Yeah, really appreciate you taking some time out of your schedule to have this conversation. Obviously, you have these conversations with customers day in, day out, so there's lots of value to be had for our audience. I enjoyed the conversation, and I really hope our listeners did too. As always, if you're tuning in and you find this useful, please do like, subscribe, comment, and share it amongst your network. If it can help just one person make the right decision when it comes to their transformation, it's doing its job. So thanks again, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you.